What's going on, everybody? My name is G and you're watching Keeping This Tech. And in today's video, we're talking cameras because it's Tuesday. And last episode, I went ahead and talked about the 33 megapixels on the A7 IV. Make sure to check that out if you missed it. But today's video, we're talking about the A7C. And for the first time since it's been launched, it's actually on sale. You can save $200 off of this camera, brand new, and even cheaper if you're like me and go for it open box. So yeah, I want to go ahead and talk about this camera because it's actually very fantastic. Let's go. All right, guys, so let's get into this video. Here it is, the A7C. Now, just to be clear here, I actually own an A7C back in 2021. I ended up returning it because I couldn't live with the grip. But ever since I did a video for the 40 millimeter here, the compact G lens that was actually designed for this camera body, I started thinking about the A7C again. And it's funny, I actually dismissed the camera. So I missed a whole bunch of stuff that had been going on about it. Like there was a brand new software update that brought some great functionality to this camera. There's now a small rig extended grip cage that you can get that makes this camera more usable to hold now with bigger lenses. And of course, the release of the super ultra compact prime lenses that Sony released to go with this camera. So now it makes more sense. And to be honest with you, the grip is still shallow. I still am not a fan of it, but it is much more manageable with a lens like this. And you know what, to be honest with you, I have the 85 millimeter lens right here. I have the 20 millimeter 1.8, and they are great on this camera too. I imagine the 35 1.8 would not be bad on this camera body. It's when you're talking about bigger lenses like the 50 1.2 or the 24 to 70 GM that a cage like this will allow me to use this camera body when, as before, it wouldn't. And I kind of felt like I was being penalized for owning this camera body and wanting to use the lenses that I decided to invest in. But again, with this cage now, this camera connection, it's all good. It's all good. Now, let's talk about why I think this camera is fantastic. This is a 24 megapixel camera. It's the same sensor that's found on the A7 III, but I don't think it's the same in terms of what you're getting for results. This overall package is actually way better than the A7 III. And I'm gonna go on the record to say that having used the A7 III for over 2 years and using this for about a week or so, hands down, this is better in every aspect. Now, where this obviously falls short is with the ergonomics, and you guys have heard me talk about that already. Typically, what these camera manufacturers will do with a lesser camera sensor is they'll throw everything at the wall. Like the RX100 cameras, for instance, you'll have 20 frames a second, specs that you would find really on like an A9 or something like that, but you're limited a lot by that sensor. And over here, Sony did the reverse. They gave you all of the sensor capability. They gave you all of the low light that you can possibly enjoy with this camera sensor, but they gave you a body that seems restrictive if you find this kind of body restrictive, right? But I gotta tell you, man, again, if you're using this camera with the right support, say this cage or lens, then you can figure out a way to manage this camera without all of those custom buttons. Again, that's if you're used to it. If you're coming from an A6000 camera, this will feel very similar and familiar to you guys. Let's talk about this first, the color science. You're getting the color science that's on the A7S III, on the A1, and so on and so forth. All the more recent Sony cameras color science, it's what you're gonna find on here. You're getting the autofocus as well that's on the A7R Mark IV. So that eye tracking, the stickiness, you're getting the sensitivity shift that you can do from the A7S III. You're getting all of that on this camera. And of course, you know, if you're into video, you wanna see yourself, you get that flippy screen. Now, I'm gonna go on record here again and say I like my tilt screen, but the A7R Mark V seems to have solved that issue, so I'll be getting that camera shortly, and we'll be talking about that when I do. Anyway, this camera has only one card slot, so that's going to be a deal breaker for a lot of people who wanna use this in a professional way. Now, for me, honestly, if I had to use this camera in a pinch for a paid job, you know, I gotta do it, right? It's better than my iPhone, but I'm not reaching for this if it is going to be something that's critical for me to make sure that I have that duplicate coverage. For that, I'll be using my A7 IV and what else I got going on with dual card slots. But that's the only like real kind of drawback to this camera as far as I'm concerned. The eye cup right here is non-existent. This little viewfinder here is really tough. And it's not that the quality in the viewfinder is bad. It's the fact that by the time you get your eye aligned to it, at least for me anyway, in the last week I've had it, I've missed the opportunity or the moment. So I'm actually using the screen mostly to capture the photos. But yeah, you have all of your ports that you need. You have your HDMI micro, your USB-C, and a headphone jack. The buttons feel all right. I had to get used to them not being so spongy. Like the A7 4 buttons and the A7R 4 buttons are bigger, they're more tactile. These are a little bit more closer to the camera body, so they feel like a little bit stiffer. They're responsive, they just don't feel the same. I got the silver top here, which I really, really like. I think the style of the silver top is it's sick. I like it. And it's cool. It's a little fun camera, right? It's like you take it out, you have fun with it. But again, man, the images that you're creating with this camera are dope. I mean, I think it goes down to -4 EV. So the low light performance on here is great. Now, in terms of video, I mentioned the color science. Listen, man, this now allows you to get the same kind of colors that you would get for video on an A7S III. Now, you don't have S-Cinetone, you have everything else, like the S-Logs, the HLG, but again, it's still 8-bit, so you can't go too crazy with S-Log. But if you go into the neutral picture profile, you can tweak it so that way it looks very close to what others have been able to get with S-Cinetone. So I'm finding it's very easy to match S-Cinetone from this camera to this camera just by messing around with the creative styles and the settings in neutral specifically. I actually have a video that I started to film back in 2021 and I never released it because I returned the A7C and I'm like, nobody cares about the A7C like that. But I'm actually gonna put it out and do some commentary over it. I'm not gonna refilm everything, but it'll be pretty cool to do that. Anyway, guys, you're looking at no recording limit for video. That's awesome. Your eye detection, all that stuff, all the auto tracking works in video. And it's just an incredible camera. It's amazing in low light for video as well. You can't go wrong. I think for me, being restricted by the grip and the lenses that I wanted to use, that really kind of held me back. But now there's not an issue, So would I recommend this camera at $1,800 for this full price? Yeah, I guess I would. I don't think that, that's a bad thing. It all depends though, right? I prefer people get started, right? Just get out there, start filming, start shooting, build up your portfolio. Don't worry about what all the hype is online, and then you can use the money for something else. Now, if you're really, really, really serious about taking your stuff to the next level, get yourself an A7 IV. That'll be more future-proof for you. You have the 10-bit color, you have S-Cinetone. Even though 4K 60 is crop, at least it's there, right? At least it's an option. So, and then you have the redundancy with the dual card slots. You have the CF Express Type A option that you don't have on this camera. So I just think it's just a matter of what you're doing, where you're at. So it's a loaded question. But I do think it's a good camera. I do recommend it for full price. I don't think that it's overpriced for that amount of money. I do think though, if you've been on the fence, definitely try to get this camera on sale. Definitely try to get it open boxed or, get it cheaper because you would be very wise to use that extra money to get lenses, lighting, and other things like this cage because that's gonna come in clutch. In fact, I think Sony should have made their own cage and sold it as an accessory. That's what I think, or at least a grip anyway. Maybe they won't need to do that with the A7C II. Speaking of the A7C II, I know this might be its own video, but I would think that to make that camera better, I'm not expecting 4K 60 or 120 on there. Maybe 4K 60 crop, okay, fine, but not full frame. Definitely a better grip, a bigger eyepiece right here, the viewfinder, and why not include a dual bay card slot, for the future, even if it's gonna be one, so we can use those CF Express Type A cards in a camera like this too. But yeah, guys, that's my video for this camera. I think it's great, fantastic. I'll check you guys out next week. Keeping this tech. Peace.